It's eyes and teeth time.
I must add that my passion for the podcast came from talking in dressing rooms. Acts would say, "This should be recorded." And we'd laugh so much. I mean, we're just reminiscing about the good old days. I weren't going to say it because I'm only 45, but I still feel that like I'm in my 20s. But anyway, yeah, we do reminisce about them days because they have changed. Especially since the lockdown, I decided I would start my own podcast, and I'm now addicted. Jimmy Cricket was the first I actually recorded back in May or June of 2020. Every interview is on the phone. So when looking back in years to come, there may be people listening and asking why is the lack of quality or interference, etc. there. Well, it's purely down to the virus. I started this in lockdown, and the essence of the podcasting, my reasoning for it, is because of the situation we're actually in. So I'm enjoying doing it this way. It's like a time capsule I'm keeping for 2020. This is a decision I made to talk to people I care about and admire, and I just hope it doesn't spoil your enjoyment of listening to it, and hope that the quality is there, not just the quantity. Jimmy Tamley for me was the first celebrity I ever met, knocking on his door at 8 a.m. before school to ask for his autograph or a lesson in ventriloquism. In hindsight, as an entertainer now, I can imagine the timing was slightly wrong. Being an entertainer, you realise 10 a.m. is possibly a time you would wake up or start to surface. As a night driver, you know, he got me back about 15 years later, I might add, because when I would stay over at his house, he'd let his daughters run in and jump on my bed at 7 o'clock. So he has got me back. I think we're quits. I think he loved that and secretly was getting his revenge. But Jimmy, for me, was my go-to guy for everything. I needed a joke, I'd go to Jim. He'd help me write it. I needed a hot chocolate and a chat, or just to watch some ventriloquists. A friend that I could relate to. I was hooked on ventriloquism from the age of 12. But like 13, 14, I would really want to know more. I started to date girls when I was in my late teens. Jimmy was the first to know. I became a man, and when I told Jim, he replied with a high five when we were driving to a gig. He bought me my first pint on my 18th birthday. He was there when my heart was broken by a girl in my early 20s, and he helped me get over it. And he's the godfather to my second daughter. I'm godfather to some of his. And they're truly incredible people. Beautiful young adults. So talented as well. Grace is very, very funny. Eleanor is adorable and so talented. They're all university, music, art. Alice and Katie and Billy are in Coca-Polly. You need to go and check out Coca-Polly. They're just wonderful. They got a great band, and it used to be called Kindred. Check them out. They're my very talented godchildren. Love them all. And not all officially my godchildren, but I do see them as my little nieces and nephews unofficially. But I love them dearly. Very proud.
Eyes and teeth, eyes and teeth. We all have eyes and we all have teeth. Eyes and teeth, eyes and teeth, eyes and teeth.
He was my best man for my UK wedding party. My first TV show was with Jim on How Do They Do It. He was teaching me vent. He also supported me then. In 97, the Big Talent Show, Jim was my sponsor on that show, and he would sit there talking to Jonathan Ross about why he thought I was about to do well. Jim added to his adult show an award-winning family show called Jungle Jim. He balanced the two. I had no idea how he was doing 10 shows a week of Jungle Jim and like 5 or 6 shows of his adult show. He was the hardest working ventriloquist that I knew, and he put his heart into it. I was in awe of this second business he built. We've always been there for each other. During the Britain's Got Talent experiences, we've both experienced that. But don't forget that Jim had an amazing audition on that show. You can't just put it down to the bad experience he had on the live shows. He was as professional and funny and dedicated to that spot. Sadly, it didn't go his way.
But I know, Jimmy knows. Everyone that knows Jim, he's the winner of New Faces. I didn't win Britain's Got Talent, so he's got one up on me, and I'm still trying to chase the winning spot. Jimmy's got that, you know. He's done fantastic. So I'm glad he didn't get through.
Oh, controversial.
And I'm looking forward to seeing how long we can talk before he goes for a cup of tea. So although he is and was always 20 years my senior, Jim has always been there for me. We don't just talk vents. but we have a passion for music, especially the Beach Boys and Brian Wilson. We've been to concerts together. So here he is. It's Jimmy Tamley.
Hi, Steve. How are you?
I'm good. We've been talking for half hour, but I've just introduced you. Yeah, so I'm great, mate. I'm really good. I've told everybody in the world, it's in the book coming up, how you taught me, how I knocked on the door, and how you welcomed me at 8 o'clock in the morning, and for 2 weeks constantly. So anyway, it wasn't just about teaching me ventriloquism. When I ended up roadieing for you, you
became cheap labour then.
cheap labour, yeah, that was good. And then and you tried so long to have a son to take over my because I went professional, and then you were trying so much to grow your own roadie, and then Billy came along, which is great. But no, it wasn't cheap labour. I always wanted to be there. I never wanted to take money off you, which you did slip me some 20s now and again, and which is very kind. But I was learning every time I was on the road with you. So you didn't just encourage me to watch ventriloquists, but you always talked about comedians that you loved. And I remember you bringing up Stephen Wright, Emo Phillips, Pee Wee Herman, Steve Martin. Yeah, all the American comics. That you're quite a big fan of American comedy, weren't you?
I always have been. I think since I was a kid. You asked me how I could remember my first laughing at television and movies. It was the Marx Brothers. I've got to go back to when you're a kid and you listen to like Groucho, Chico, Harpo, and you watch them, and the visualness of Harpo and the stupid stuff they did, you'd be just like falling down the chair laughing. The whole family would be, you know. And then you grow up and you appreciate the goons, you appreciate slapstick, and you appreciate, you know, Grouchoisms. You know, I just kind of fell in love with that. First of all, just loving comedy, just always having a laugh in the house. Morecambe and Wise, and there were a lot more variety shows on television when I was growing up in the 60s.
Yeah.
I was born in 54, so you know, from about the age of whatever age it was, you know, throughout the 60s, there was Morecambe and Wise, Mike and Bernie Winters, that's it, yeah, and just much more than there is now, the proper variety shows.
Yeah, the other, especially in the 80s, you had Little and Large and Cannon and Ball. And so do you think double acts are really good to watch for ventriloquists to learn their comedy? Because it's between the two, isn't it? It's the two people aspect, and you think man and dummy, you could watch a double act and you learn a lot more from that than you would a stand-up comedian.
I think so. If you want to be a ventriloquist, then you've got to watch comedy full stop anyway. But
yeah.
The double acts, when I've analysed ventriloquism, watch how they all work and behave, most of the time it's going to be a behavioural thing where it's a straight man, funny man, and the funny man in this case is going to be the dummy. The dummy's going to be misbehaving and being insulting back to the ventriloquist or the audience and that kind of thing, and the ventriloquist is berating him and telling him not to, and so the ventriloquist becomes the figure of the establishment, you know, like the proper or the teacher or the parent or something like that, you know. But at the same time, it's the guy is doing everything. The ventriloquist is actually the funny man, but people, you know, don't appreciate it. They say, what, Nuki Bear is funny, Lord Charles, have you seen Ahmed the Terrorist? He's so funny. But the skill is in Ray Allen, it's in Roger the Corsi, it's in Jeff Dunham, it's in portraying themselves as the straight man, but at the same breath, they're delivering the punchline at the same time. It's a really weird. And then the other form of ventriloquism is not where it's interacting with the straight man, funny man. It's a relationship kind of behaviour where you're kind of almost a spiritual or psychic thing where the dummy and the ventriloquist are kind of look like they're in each other's subconscious minds. It's a very, very strange thing when you sit down and you can detach yourself as a ventriloquist and look at the ventriloquists and stand back and admire what's going on, because there's a lot going on. People don't appreciate you're standing there with the dummy and I've got like half an hour, 45 minutes or an hour, however long you've got to do, 5 minutes. You're talking and the dummy's responding. It's you responding in another voice. You talk to yourself, you respond in another voice.
Yeah, that's what I remember, that I fell in love with when I saw you on New Faces, and it wasn't just somebody standing there getting laughs, but you had this dummy and you were actually you had an art, and ventriloquism was actually you puppeteering at the same time as being a stand-up comedian. So there's loads of different aspects of the ventriloquist, loads of different components that you need to deliver.
Ventriloquist is if it's a doll, you're making it blink, you're making the eye move, you're making the mouth move constantly, and then he's turning his neck at the right time and turning his head at the right time. You don't want to get the eyes in the wrong place at the wrong time when you're delivering the punchline. Or if it's a puppet, you've got so much more manipulation on your wrist and your arm, it becomes the other character. And so there's all that going on. Though I found, and it's really, really strange when the comedians listen to this or appreciate, when you're actually dying on your ass, when you're having a bad gig, right, for a ventriloquist, and the audience aren't laughing, it exposes every fundamental body, that everything is just like, I'm just up here having a conversation with myself. I don't believe you got to try and believe he's talking, but if the audience aren't laughing, he's not funny, I'm not being funny, I'm talking to myself, pulling levers and working a sock or a puppet or whatever it's going to be. It does expose you, but on the other hand, the flip side of it, when the audience is roaring with laughter, it must be in stand-up comedy. But the comedian, at the end of the day, just holding a microphone has got to be the purest form of comedy.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it comes across as quite a difficult thing to do, really, as a ventriloquist. But you taught me all of that, about writing comedy as well. And watch the best comedians, like even like Bill Hicks, George Carlin. You'd watch loads from the 80s, and it was a really good learning ground, actually, to sit down and watch some American comedy, not just British comedy.
Yeah, I've always watched from my early days when I was learning ventriloquism and going around pubs and then going on stage as a professional. You've got to try and get the jokes from somewhere, and there wasn't a lot of comedy like there is nowadays. I could go to HMV in Oxford Street, and all you're really going to find is going to be Monty Python is going to be in the comedy rack with Tony Hancock, with some Steptoe and Son, which is basically a television show. You're going to find, if you're lucky, you'll find Bill Dana, who was an American comedian who did a character called Jose Jimenez, is a Mexican immigrant, and he becomes an astronaut, or the next interview he's a surfer. Jose's always a different character every time he had a sketch.
Okay.
Jose Jimenez, Bill Dana. You're going to find Carl Reiner and Mel Brooks, and I found a 2,000-year-old man with Mel Brooks fascinating, because this guy's lived through everything. I mean, when it's just the radio or just listening to an album, you listen to two guys talking. One's interviewing the 2,000-year-old man. We know when you see video clips of it nowadays, there's just two guys on stage jesting about. But when it's just audio, when it's just playing in your ears, what was it like to live? What did you eat thousands of years ago? He met Joan of Arc, and he knew everybody, the kings and the queens, and so it's a great comedy. And that sort of got me thinking about ventriloquism and styles of gags and stuff, because I kind of work on like Carl Reiner and Mel Brooks, and like the guy who interviews Bill Dana, an interviewing basis, and Jeff Dunham does this a lot too. You're asking questions and getting stupid answers. You ask a question, get an answer, set up punchline, question, punchline, set up punchline. It's the same way a comedian works.
Yes, yeah.
And those are my basic, I did love Steve Martin. You love some of the crazy comedians. You think, how do you incorporate that kind of stuff into ventriloquism? It's very difficult, because the best ways a ventriloquist is ever going to perform is going to be with something that talks.
Eyes and teeth.
I'm just making a fresh cup of tea.
Okay.
Have you got a cup of tea at hand?
I had a coffee, actually, just before I came on. So,
God, coffee. Yeah, I still can't take the stuff, Still something that doesn't agree.
Your body needs to get used to it, I think, the caffeine, But it smells amazing. I love smelling it in the morning, but
it smells lovely.
Tasting it, it's disgusting. I don't know why. I don't know why I just had one, to be honest.
I like coffee cake too. I like a coffee cake, or walnut and coffee or something. But just drinking coffee.
Coffee flavoured things you like? You like coffee?
Yeah, I can drink Guinness, and you think Guinness has got to be not everybody's cup of tea, but
it's not a cup of tea. It's Guinness. Yeah, but I mean, if you like coffee flavoured things, you'd think you'd like coffee, wouldn't you? Because it's got the flavour of coffee.
Absolutely, yes.
Yes. Do you like tea flavoured things? You try things that taste like tea.
You've got me in my comfort zone now.
He's so relaxed. There's one thing I know about you, is that you are at your most comfortable when you're watching comedy, listening, or even talking comedy. I could go and eat a whole packet of biscuits and talk to you all day about comedy and the vent world, which is what we've done before. Do you remember?
You're going to be my go-to guy, because when your book comes out and all that,
Yeah.
it'll be just fascinating to watch what you've gone through.
Yeah, in the early years, Jim, you taught me not just the vent, you taught me how to work the stage in the right situation, do your act in the right lighting, with the right sound, with no TVs in the room or no noise at the bar. Every scenario to help you command attention of an audience and try and make them people laugh. But I mean, if there's just so many distractions around the room, it makes it a comedy gig actually quite hard, doesn't it? Especially a visual one like ourselves. So what is the worst scenario for you in that? Because I mean, you've worked holiday parks. I grew up roadieing for you in holiday parks, and I learned by watching you how to work those stages and in the right situation.
Well, I think a lot of the places we went to in those days, we're talking like the early 90s now, I think, and you were probably about 14 maybe, and you came around a lot of gigs with me. I was doing a lot of holiday parks, I just probably finished my last big major summer seasons by then, with Joe Longthorne and Scarborough and Blackpool, and I probably yet to do all the amount. I did a lot of work with Joe Pasquale later on, but I think going around not just holiday parks but clubs and corporate things.
Yeah.
And I wanted you to see as many environments as I was working in. And I will go to a place and you'll see the stage, there's no lighting. And you think, and as a ventriloquist, that is vital, because if you can't see the puppet, then he's the comedian, he's the funny man. You've got to watch his mouth. I'll always hold my right hand up, the palm of my hand, and face a lighting or someone and say, look, can you see my right hand moving next to me? And that's where the dummy's going to be. And the sound, I just want to get a nice crystal clear sound, because otherwise you're not going to hear me or the dummy. And just being elevated a little bit helps, I think, if you just got
it has to be a right size stage as well. You have to be, you just have to be seen and heard, basically. And you can lose an audience on that. You did teach me you could lose an audience if they can't see you or hear you, or if one table is noisy, and it kind of dominoes, doesn't it? But you start losing the whole audience after that.
Yeah, I think what I do now, and I've done it for quite a number of years, I work with a headset microphone. When I started doing children's parties years ago as Jungle Jim, my kids are growing up, I did hundreds of kids' parties because I needed a lot of money with 5 kids.
Yeah, they were brilliant shows. They were very funny for kids, those shows.
Yeah,
brilliant.
My weekends have been taken up doing 2 or 3 of those, and then doing a cabaret or a corporate or something. I got to get my corporate head on, or my cabaret, or my holiday park head on.
You sound like Wurzel Gummidge.
Yeah, I know. So I remember saying to you, if you get into a difficult situation, after you've been with me for so many years, looking at me, you're going to say, what would Jimmy do in this situation?
I do that. I done that last year. I was in a golf club with Bob Webb, and he said, right, you're on this table with me, and then we'll have dinner, and then we go on. So he'll stand, and he just stood up and done his stand-up. He's about to introduce me, but when I got to that room, I thought, no, I can't just do my spot there in the middle of a room with me act. So I said, well, I'm going to have to move right back. So I backed up against the wall, and I said to Bob, I always think what Jimmy Tamley would do, and then I backed up against the wall. I put the mics down and my props there, and I left the table and come back to it, so, and then the lighting wasn't that good, and even the angle of the room, I had to move myself. So every scenario was the lighting, the visuals, and it was all, what would Jimmy do in this aspect? Because comedy doesn't work, visual comedy doesn't work if they can't see you, and it did work. I got them really by watching you, or listening to you actually doing a golf club. I opened up with a line which was related to that scenario, of a golf evening, and so so even writing was a big thing about being your roadie. You would teach me on the way home about what was wrong with that gig, or what went right with that gig.
Yeah, we did hundreds of gigs, and I was able to dissect it like you do when you're on way home. You dissect a bad one more than you will a good one.
Yeah.
Because good ones, you just, you got nice sound, nice lighting, you've been introduced properly, the crowd are cranked up, you can hear the vibe in the room that, wow, they sound like they're going to be a great laugh. Even before you walk out there, you can feel the vibe. There's a vibe to a room. It's I don't know what you would call it. A singer called Gloria Warren years ago, and she was quite psychic. She could say things things to me about what's going to happen in my life and and they were quite true too. Sort of quite a few predictions she made right for me, and I wasn't going up there to get my palm read. She was just telling me over a course of weeks. And she said to me one day, we're in this club. She's saying, just listen to the audience. There was little murmurs going on. So this is going to be a tough crowd tonight. This is not a very good atmosphere. Call it atmosphere, call it spirit, call it vibe.
Yeah.
You can walk out there and you think, well, I got my work cut out here to do 45 minutes.
You know the outcome.
Sometimes you go out there, and I've gone to little golf clubs are lovely, or a holiday park, and the place is buzzing. Everybody's laughing, having a great time. Now, in these situations, you need a good loud microphone and good lighting and all those things. As they fall in you at the same time, you're gonna have a great time, aren't you, with the crowd?
Yeah.
It makes life a lot easier.
Yeah, when they're in a good mood, they've had a good act before them, or a singer or something, and they are all built up. I mean, the social clubs were great for that, weren't they? They were a really good atmosphere, the social clubs, because they pay their £8 or £10 to see a show and have chicken and chips, and they were there for that reason.
Yeah, there were nice little variety shows I would get in workman's clubs years ago, and you would be the opening act in the first half and the closing act in the second half of somewhere else down the road. You do the doubles and all that. But sometimes the comedians you got to watch out for, because they'll some of them they're down for 5 minutes, and so I'm just going to warm up and put you on, and then 25 minutes later they're still getting the audience. They're roaring around, laughing, think, my God, I've got to follow this now. But over the years, I've followed so many comedians, and some might struggle for a few minutes, or sometimes they've got to forget about him. You've got to just go out there and do your thing, whatever. You're going to get paid.
Yeah, you supported Jimmy Jones for a couple of years, didn't you? So what was it like working with Jimmy? Because he's quite a blue comedian, but I guess he's an adult comedian. Did you tailor your act towards it, or did you just do your thing?
I find over the years I work with so many comedians, and I do feel akin to them, because we're all in the comedy game, and so they do appreciate the ones that like their comedy, no matter what it's like. If they like their Tommy Coopers, their Morecambe White, they like the stand-up, they like the ventriloquism. Good comedians, and they respect you. They're great to work with. And I've had to follow where sometimes the star name will go out and do a few minutes, first of all, and then put you on. And that's happened to me lots of times with comedians like, let's say, with Jimmy Jones or Joe Longthorne or Joe Pasquale, Peter Kay. Work with different names, and they'll go out there and they'll do a few minutes. They're obliged to do something. It's their show, depending on what the promoter wants. Sometimes they just want the bill to go on at the end of the night. I like to follow blue comedians, and they're going to swear and all that, and they want you because you're not a sweary, filthy act. They are. So you can't go on and be like that. So we've got to create the contrast.
Yeah, of course.
Near the knuckle when they're not near the knuckle. You support Jimmy Cricket. You can't go out there and do a Jimmy Jones type of support act and be filthy. You've got to be respectful for who the support act is, who top of the bill is.
Yes.
I think ventriloquists were quite safe in the old days of summer season shows. The ventriloquist could keep the dancers are going to sing, and until you get to the top of the bill, you're just part of a whole summer thing that goes on every night after night in that season, in that town, for that duration of time.
Yeah, that's true. When I started out, you told me about loads of comedy books and stuff, and you really tried to get into my head that it's really good to write comedy, but also to read loads of comedy books as well. There was one by Richard Belzer, which you gave me, How to Be a Stand-Up Comic. I mean, he was that's a really good way of sort of structuring an act and a comedy show. And like you say, you mentioned Jeff Dunham, Roger de Courcy, even Paul Event, great comics, and they would always mainly do a lot of stand-up before they got the dummies out. And so how important is it to learn comedy before you actually go out and be a vent?
I came unstuck with this a few times in the early days because I didn't have the stage presence to walk out on my own without a puppet, and so, which is quite important if you're in lots of scenarios like eventually I was in, like workmen's clubs and that kind of stuff. And I would walk out with this big cat called Oscar. Yeah. And I would say to the comedians, because sometimes I'm 5'11", so I would say to them, can you set the microphone up to your chin or to your forehead if they're taller than me, or so we'll just set the microphone up to that height. and then and leave it in the middle of the stand there, and then pull my stool across, and then I'd walk out on stage. I'd say, "Here's Jimmy Tamley," and you walk out, hey, and then the microphone is set down to 5'2" and the chair is on the other side of the room, and I thought, oh, and I walk out with the dummy.
Oh no!
So now I've got to try and pull the microphone up.
Yeah, you're not hands free.
Standing on the legs, and if he's done it tight, then it's almost impossible to pull it up. And then pull the chair over with my foot so I can stand one-legged.
Yeah.
It's just a whole clumsy.
It looks rubbish, doesn't it? Because you're. Is this why it's better to have a head mic? And this is why you use a head mic, because it takes all of that messiness out of your presentation.
It does also with the stand-up I do and the chats that I do. It's nice to have two arms and express yourself and walk around and be a proper human being.
Yeah.
And gesticulating and all the things you've got to do without holding a microphone in one hand.
Yeah, talking with your hands, so to speak.
Yeah, but I found it also with my visual puppets like Lightning Les, that the headset is just imperative. It's so hard to bend down, talk to the dummy in all the positions we're doing. Sounds a bit fun.
I've seen the Lightning Les bit, yeah.
With my puppets. If you've got a headset microphone, and I started doing it on a Joe Pasquale tour, and he was taking the mickey out of me. And but within a few weeks, he got one, and he swore by it. By the end of the tour, he said it's one of the best things to come out of this tour is the laughs we've had, and also I'm working on a headset microphone now.
Yeah.
And I sent, and he's always got. I've never seen Joe since with holding a microphone in one hand anymore.
Really?
So taken to it. And I find it really. It came about because I was doing children's parties as Jungle Jim.
Yeah.
And you can't entertain kids in a traditional ventriloquist kind of way.
No, of course, with a prop comedian, I guess, prop comedians need these, or you have like a handheld mic clip around your neck where you put the big microphone. A lot of magicians do that. Yeah,
they do that. They've got this chain around their neck with a microphone clip to it.
Or coat hanger.
It's really clumsy and ugly. And I had one for a summer season in Blackpool once, where someone strapped his radio mic to my chest on a little board with clips on it. But when you move your head, you can't turn your neck. You've really got to move your shoulders and your head together, side to side, because as soon as you turn your head away from the microphone, the voice goes distant, or you lose a bit of the clarity. So you can't use a handheld microphone and strap it to your chest and turn your head to talk to the dummy. So yeah, that's the beauty of a headset microphone. I just swear by them. One of those things that I can't do without. And if once in a blue moon the headset doesn't work or something, or there's something wrong with it, and I have to use the handheld on the stick or something.
Yeah, does that throw you?
Really throws me.
Yeah, sure. I remember your transition when you used to set up your mic stands and stuff, and that was one of the extra props I had to carry in when I was roadieing for you. But it must help you these days, really, for comedy purposes, when you're in the audience and you walk round now with a dummy and you're talking and heckling. You're heckling people in the audience, you walk around and you're just ad-libbing lines in the audience. I mean, that's great for an event to do that. I've not really seen an event actually do that until you told me you were doing it. And it's a really nice way of close-up ventriloquism, so to speak, so.
It's another thing that comes with a headset, and, walking around running. And I know this is a podcast being listened to by comedians and stuff, and I talk about children's parties. Oh my goodness me, is he a kids entertainer? But I was a professional entertainer for 30 years before I started doing any kids work. And a lot of children's entertainers, I think, are magic based anyway, but they'll start with children and work their way up and try and become an adult entertainer, whereas I did the other way round.
Yeah.
I was already an adult
Well, you've done it successfully, though. It's an award-winning Jungle Jim show, was. It's amazing what you built.
I've been on big summer season shows, won New Faces Final, and done lots of clubs and the big cabaret clubs, and so I've done everything in the business. And the reason I was doing the kid show was just for extra money at weekends, raising a big family and all that kind of stuff that goes with being a dad, So yeah, it came in really handy.
Yeah.
And then I just did it with adults too. When you first get on, you realise when you watch comedians and he follows in a working club situation, the comedian, some lady gets up from the table and goes to the toilet, and the comedian follows her out there, and it's hilarious.
Yeah.
And so, oh my God, me because I'm sitting on a mic stand with one leg on a stool with a dummy sat on my knee.
Yeah, it frees you up, doesn't it, really, for more comedy moments in the show, which is quite nice.
I've had it in corporate situations where I'm chatting to the audience, and with corporate gigs, they can be hot and cold. You never know what. And I've got the whole entire room listening and laughing, except this one table. They're having little private laughs and whatever, or taking the mickey out of me, maybe. I don't know what they were doing, right in the corner.
They make you paranoid, don't they? I've done those corporate gigs. I think it's the same table at every corporate gig.
So I just walked in straight to the table with the dummy and just took the mickey out of them all. And they certainly weren't expecting that, and they sort of got their backs up and think, oh my God, we thought we were being discreet, but we're not, So they got them up and got them on my side and got the audience up on my side.
Yeah, well, I think one of your early characters, which is my favourite, Knuckles, which you done on New Faces, you done him at all of the holiday parks, and he really worked well in the army bases as well. Now, I'd never been to an army base until you took me to a couple of yours, and I was Roadie, and you'd say, oh, it's going to be a tough one tonight, because they were just big burly blokes just getting drunk. And I remember one particular one, actually, where you were doing probably in Somerset, and went to the gig. You went down really great, and we just pack in the car, and then but they were so drunk, one of them just sort of stopped in front of me while I was loading your gear in, and he looked at me, and I thought he was going to ask me a question. Instead of, he opened his mouth and he puked all over me. Do you remember that moment?
Oh my gosh.
I knew that made you laugh. I'm laughing now, but I was like a 14 or 15-year-old young budding ventriloquist, and one of your audience members puked over me. Now this is where you learn. You really made me learn back then.
Learn to clear up vomit. It's great. It's one of those things you need in life,
Yeah, but I remember you wore your suit home that night. You drove home in your suit, and you let me wear your jeans and your shirt. I was baggy clothes Steve. I looked like Tom Hanks in Big.
I made you stay in the trunk.
You should have put me in the trunk. I mean, these are the places you worked. You have to deal with these hecklers and stuff. What sort of hecklers? Do you remember any really good heckle lines where people have heckled you? Because sometimes some hecklers can be funnier than the actual act, and I've seen it. I've had people funnier than me in the audience, or even the other way round. Have you shut any up?
Yeah.
I know you have, because I remember them.
The easiest thing to do is just to go back with one of those stock in trade snap comeback lines.
Yes.
And you've got those, the ventriloquist would say, yeah, who's working you? And it sounds so simple. And the dummy says to the guy, yeah, right, mate, who's working you? Or something to that effect, Ron Lucas line. Yeah, sorry, mate, you missed the rehearsal. This is a double act, But sometimes with Knuckles, the biker, I would just blatantly tell them to shut up. I'd be vicious back to them and call them something I won't say on the podcast,
Yeah.
Just as simple as who's working you, tosspot,
Yeah. Well, coming out of Knuckles, that worked though, didn't it? And it got a big laugh.
I never really had many persistent hecklers in all the years. If it is someone who comes back to like an annoying heckler, they're drunk off their face. Every comedian gets this kind of thing where someone's drunk and they think they're funny. You shut them up and get a laugh on their turn the audience against them, but then they don't realise what's been said about them or to them or understood what's been said, and then they just come back, telling you whatever they think of you, and then you've just got a situation there where you really want security to take them out of the room, or you're dealing with them and they won't shut up, and it's just interfering with the flow of the evening.
I know sometimes you have to ignore them to begin with, don't you? But if they are persistent, you have to start on them, really. I mean, just to win the audience back again. I remember a line you'd say, sit in your chair and I'll plug it in. You used to do that with Knuckles.
Yeah, this is a stock and trade thing. If you can actually listen to what they say to you and come back with something. And I mean, Ross Noble's good like this. Someone who listens to the heckler or induces heckling. Now, Jimmy Carr induces the heckling. He wants it. Bring it on.
He's ready. Yeah.
He's ready for them and loaded up with one-liners about their mother and their sister and all this stuff he's going to say about them. He's really good at that. But I think it's just something you need. I find as a ventriloquist, they end up talking to the dummy. So make the dummy engage with them. and then that tends to sort of shut them up most of the time because they're talking to a piece of wood or a piece of latex or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then you get on with the routine, but sometimes you've been in a dressing room and someone will come out and say, "Oh, there's a bloke in the corner there, he's gobbing off," or "There's a noisy table."
Yeah, they warn you. Don't you love it when they warn you before you go on? Say there's a guy there, and then you're waiting for it, and then your whole act is focused on this one guy. You're waiting, and then he don't heckle you, and you forget about it. But sometimes it could consume your whole mind while you're working, couldn't it?
I've had the situation now, and this is a strange thing nowadays, because years ago, when people were less PC and all this, security man or someone would come over and they would be out of the room. They would be just, you wouldn't even see it. They'd be just marched out, taken by the scruff of the neck and shoved out the door. But nowadays, a lot of the venues don't employ enough security guards, and so the guy who's at the front door is the only guy, and if he's not in the room when you're doing your show, then he's not going to see a noisy. I had a noisy table in a place once. Just the whole park were just the whole audience were just like 400 or 500 people, just noisy table. They were just having their own private laughs, and there's just stuff going on. And I'm performing, and I've managed to, I've addressed it a couple of times, but they're just ignoring me. And you carry on, they give you something back. They think they're in their own little space, their own little world, having their private laughs. They heckle you back, shout something back to you, and then ignore you. Don't ignore what you're saying.
Yeah.
The security man then doesn't deal with the situation because there's more of them than him. They might even, if he kicks them out, as the holiday park or wherever the venue, you're going to lose money because that table aren't going to pay for their meal, or that table are going to cancel their caravan or their week's holiday. They've got this scenario of, just hope they calm down.
It's revenue, isn't it? It's all about revenue, keeping people in the bars and selling them drinks that are going to now heckle the comedy act.
The beauty is, as you get older and you get more experience now, because I say in my 50s and 60s, I'm not going to tolerate this now. So the worst scenario comes for me is I'm just going to get in my car, forget the money, and just go home. I know comedians and people have done that, get back in their car. I've heard that. You've heard people say that.
I have, yeah.
But I've addressed the situation. I would just say to them, either through the dummy. The trouble is with it, as any ventriloquist listening, you don't want to appear to be telling them off. Because you then give out an angry vibe because you've heckled them. You try to doing the heckle stoppers. They're still noisy, and then you address the situation through the dummy and say, listen, mate, if you don't keep quiet, because the rest of the audience want to listen to what's going on. You're making a noise. Could you please just keep it quiet, or just go to some other bar? Because the audience here are trying to enjoy the show, and most people here, you're enjoying the show, aren't you guys, ladies and gentlemen? And the audience will applaud and cheer you, turn the tables on them. And
you just know they're on your side then.
Yeah. It's turning into a very negative podcast now.
You've always taught me comedy, as well as anything else.
Yes, Job. Brown envelope. Yeah, mate, slip it under the back seat there. All right, mate. Yeah, just quiet about that, mate. All right, yeah.
It's all about the money, isn't it? You get in there, make them laugh, and go home. But you over the years, you always tried out new ideas, but you always wrote new routines, and you had this thing called the Visible Radio Show, and we talked about it for hours and hours in the car, on the way home, and you were always you always put it on the stage, and then if it didn't work or you didn't think it was going anywhere, you just write another routine. Then I remember writing Lightning Les with you. I mean, I think I wrote you one line, but we were sat there in the car for hours and say, I've got this new dummy, he's a boxer, let's write a script, and it's really nice writing with you back then. But you always this is why I always try and invent a new routine or a new dummy, because that's why I've got loads in the garage sitting there, because we're always trying to reinvent ourselves. And you, Jimmy Tamley, have always done that. It's always coming up with something new. I mean, Knuckles was my favourite character, but he's not in your act now. You've got a whole brand new set of characters, which is fantastic, and not an easy thing to do, is to move on from one of your main characters. But you do that because you're creative. The creative side and comedy side in you as a performer, it's about passion, isn't it? You love comedy, you love being a ventriloquist, and I've got that instilled in me. But it's about creating and moving with the times, I guess, and just being original.
Wow, that's a very long question.
Oh, was it even a question?
You set up a scenario. Yeah, Steve, I've always liked that. I remember you're Kenny the Railway Man and all these.
Yeah.
We dabble in all sorts. It got me when you said you want to do a podcast, and it got me thinking about some of the characters I've had over the years. And I remember one of them that never saw the light of day, really. I did it 2 or 3 times, and I really wish I'd persevered with it. And what it was I had in New Faces Heat, I had a Ronald Reagan dummy, but it was like a generic off-the-shelf Axtell puppet.
Okay.
And it was like a mould of the face, so that the eyes were just 2 kind of like normal kind of buttons that they use. But the face was it was definitely Ronald Reagan. It couldn't be anybody else. And, so
I remember him.
After he left power, I never used him very much because I didn't particularly like the puppet very much. But I was trying to get my money's worth out of the puppet so it could pay for itself. I mean, I did use it on New Faces Heat. He came on stage as Superman in the Heat, I think it was. I haven't watched that for years, but and I dressed him up in an old Macintosh and put sunglasses on him and to cover his eyes up so you wouldn't see it's Ronald Reagan. And he had this distinctive quiff, so I put a trilby hat on him. So he's trilby, Macintosh, dark glasses, and he's paparazzi photographer, and he's always trying to get the scoops going through the bins and all this kind of stuff, you know. And I remember writing some really nice jokes for him. And what was the joke I did with him? He says, is there any big stars arriving in the UK? Said, yeah. I was really surprised this morning because Cher was going to be landing at Heathrow Airport. And I was there at 5 o'clock in the morning, and she surprised me. What was that? She arrived at Gatwick. That's the only joke I could remember out of the routine.
That's nice.
But the potential there, if there's a ventriloquist, for a paparazzi, you know, I mean, nowadays, they've got telescopic lenses, they can watch, you know, Meghan and Harry from a drone or something like that, you know.
Well, the material, it was talked about mileage when you told me about comedy in the early days, and you just said the mileage has to go quite far. And I mean, the mileage in celebrity these days is huge, isn't it? It can just be never ending because celebrity is massive.
It is. It's what showbiz kind of circulates on the whole thing at the moment. And you really miss people like Joan Rivers at the moment, who I did see in 2012, I think it was.
I remember. Remember you went, yeah.
Passed away, yeah. She would just tear into people, absolutely crucify them, and mercilessly, and just great gags, great the way she just destroys people without seeming like any care in response to whatever she says. You know, no Rivers, but yeah, just inventing characters is all part of the fun of being a ventriloquist. And the radio show you mentioned, I was trying to come up with a way of talking to as many different characters from as many walks of life as you can. So, like Harry Enfield, you think of, as he thinks in terms of characters, him and Paul Whitehouse, we think in terms of dummies and stuff. So I'd have the Hell's Angel, I'd have the blues singer, I'd have the American footballer, I'd have the surfer dude, I'd have the boxer, you know, I'd have the paparazzi photographer, maybe, or nowadays I've got the hippie dude.
Yeah, they're all a series of sketches, aren't they? Comedy sketches, and you're rewriting a sketch.
You watch how the top vents like Strassman and Jeff Dunham, they work exactly the same way. They ask them questions, building up relationships with their characters, and every character lasts 5, 10, 15 minutes, no more than 20. I mean, Walter, I don't see him doing more than 20 minutes. But yeah, their own little stand-up comedians coming out of the boxes, that's what they are.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Brilliant way to put it together. So your Knuckles, I'm going back to Knuckles again, but do you think it's important for a character to have, he was quite distinctive with his wah, wah, wah. Every time he'd do a gag, he'd have this really, really cheeky laugh, wouldn't he, at the end? There he is. He's in the room.
He was a good character for me, because coming out of as a child of the 60s, coming into the 70s, you would see Hell's Angels and bikers, and it was kind of associated with rebelliousness, you know, leather clad, you know, dangling sort of like stuff on their leather jackets, coming with tassels, and Hell's Angel clubs and chapters they're called, aren't they? So you've got Hell's Angels. It's called comedy hooks. You got the hooks to hang the comedy on. So you've got Hell's Angels, then you've got bikes, there's something on the bike, and the CC is the bike, the strength, the power of the bike, the pillion of the bike, who's on the pillion, the girl's on the pillion, and then you've got the helmet, his horns on his helmet. Are they horns on your helmet now? The roots of my wisdom teeth, wah, wah, wah. all that kind of stuff. And then he'd have the girlfriend scenarios and stuff like that, because he's a tough guy. He's always a part of being a tough character, and he's got a big ego as a tough hard nut. But basically, he's not really a hard nut, because he's just a boy biker trying to be a real man. And I had so many really good lines with Knuckles, but in the end, you like a lot of comedy acts, you fall into a format. You fall in if you stop progressing with it, which is the worst thing. Happiness is progress.
Yeah.
When you stop progressing with the character and you stop writing for it, or the audiences don't associate with Hell's Angels as much. He's got tattoos, he's got a helmet, he's got glasses, he's got horns on his helmet, he's got a motorbike in theatre situations. But nowadays the world's moved on. The tattoo thing's there. Tattoos are great, but you need a whole different character now.
Sorry, that's my favourite gag, by the way. That I used to go to the circus to see the fat tattooed lady. Now they're everywhere. I love that line.
Sounds like a Mick Miller line, I think.
Do you know what? It probably is a Mick Miller line. It's a very funny line. I mean, if Sons of Anarchy was as big, and Sons of Anarchy is about bikers, like Hell's Angels, if that was as big as Game of Thrones, then Knuckles would be straight back in there, because it would be streaming on Netflix, as a special. But
I don't watch that. I tell you, I've seen the adverts for Sons of Anarchy, but I don't know what it's about.
I'm quite into that at the moment.
But I had a lot of gags now. I just say to Knuckles, why do bikers wear leather? Because chiffon wrinkles, and all that. How did you manage to afford such an expensive bike? I worked 24 hours a day. I scrimped and I saved and I stole it.
This is bringing back a lot of memories of my childhood, It's brilliant. It's brilliant stuff that worked. I really loved him as a character, in Knuckles. I used to carry him on stage, and hand him to you. I got to hand it to you.
Really well. I did try and revive him, because you and the family were saying to me about 4 or 5 years ago, "Oh, love Knuckles, got to get Knuckles, love Knuckles." And he's been buried for years. And I got Peter Pullen to sculpt up a new body and all that. I put Knuckles' head on him, but I just couldn't feel myself progressing with him. I'd have to start. I feel like it was time. It worked in the 70s and the 80s, and just about in the 90s. And I started dropping him. I think also the cruise ship work made me drop it, because when you're working on cruise ships, as you know,
excess luggage,
light and tight. You can't work with really heavy dolls on cruise ships. So you've got to work light. And Knuckles and the doll ventriloquist dummies are pretty heavy. So you drop him for economy's sake, and then he doesn't get back in the show again, because you find, actually, I can do 45 minutes, I can do 2 hours without him. So
that's true. You have to join in Southampton and come back to Southampton, really, and you can take what you like, take a whole set. But it's
that's why I stopped working with dolls, and I've just gone back to dolls now. You've seen my last couple I'm working on, but I don't think they're going to see the light of day on a cruise ship, because they're too delicate. You need to treat them with a squashy little puppet. You can shove it in with all your clothes, but with a doll, it's delicate. And I've taken dolls with me before on cruise ships, and some guy in freight will drop it from a height, and you get it out of the box.
It's a big worry, isn't it? They're so expensive, but they're also quite fragile, and there's the risk of losing them in transit, or them smashing in transit. And when you get to that venue, if they're a soft puppet, they'd be fine. But if one of these vent dummies or figures actually get damaged, then you can't go on that night with it, because it's
you don't want that situation when the ship's off the coast of Africa or India or somewhere. And then you got to realise that the head's been damaged or the eyes are dislodged, and you can't repair it, because Peter Pullen is 5,000 miles away. You've got to go on stage with a damaged puppet to justify the time, or find another way around it.
Here's an idea. What if we contract Peter Pullen to come on cruise ships with us? Would that help? Would that be a better way of saving money? Or
yeah, bring his little toolkit with him.
He's just in the wings. Hang on, I need you in between shows. An arm's falling off.
Yeah, the mask doesn't work. The masks are going to be a thing, aren't they, when you get back to working on the cruise ship?
Are you rewriting? I don't think there'll be any masks pretty soon. Not for a year at least.
No, I would imagine than not. It's funny, isn't it? So the best things that have happened to ventriloquists in the last 20 years is the mouth mask. It really elevated us and made us work in a spontaneous kind of, appeared spontaneous, whereas most aspects of ventriloquism, it probably is scripted or is a bit ad-libby, but when you've got someone on stage and you can't control their behaviour, only the mask is going to say.
Sort of out-control dummy, isn't it?
Yeah, it really puts you on edge, makes your comedy appear to be like the edgy comedians. It makes you appear to be, well, this guy is really good, he's so funny, got the mask on this bloke and the things he made him do, it's hilarious, you know. But you're going to lose that. I think we're going to lose it for a few months. Who wants to put a mask on your face and COVID-19's going around?
Yeah, it's probably going to be a no-no. But you know what? That helps people create. That helps us recreate. And we have got these new characters. I think it's time we put pen to paper and start rewriting. That's what I'm going to do this week. So it's all about being creative. But I didn't have this creative streak until I met you, Jimmy. Thank you so much for all of your time over the last 33 years. I really appreciate everything you gave me back then, because you gave me a passion, really, for loving comedy and vent. So I really appreciate that, mate. And we've laughed so much over the years, haven't we, about loads of things.
It's better than having a real job, isn't it?
I wish I had a job at the moment, but it is better than working.
Yeah, no, it's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed it, and hang up this now because I want to put the kettle on and finish off our chat off air.
Take care, buddy. Thanks, Jim.
Hot chocolate for you.
Oh, you've made me tea as well. I love that.
Hot chocolate for you.
No sugars. I'm not drinking tea with sugar now because of you as well. Everything's your fault.
Only the good things.
Yes. Ciao.
Eyes and teeth.
Jim always ended our journeys when I was roadieing for him after his shows. Whether it was a 1 hour journey or 6 hour journey, I'd get in at 1, 2 in the morning. He would end it with, "That's your lesson for today." He'd give me lessons in those hours of journeys. He'd always talk about vent or what happened in the show that night. So even during this chat today, I feel that I've learnt more. He's so generous, kind, genuine. He's one of the funniest men I know. And he's passed on not only his advice and wisdom, but to me, I feel like I'm the person I am today has a lot to do with who he is. He paid it forward, and I've always done the same. Thank you, Jimmy. This week's quote from a very famous comedy personality is from Steve Martin. "Be so good, they can't ignore you." Eyes and Teeth is written, produced, and hosted by Steve Hewlett. Thank you to the vocals of Rich T, Nina Hewlett, Lola and Larissa Hewlett. Thank you to our good friend Kevin Dean, who produced the music. And thank you to the Cuckoo, who pops in now and again. And a big shout out to Buzz Sprout for hosting our podcast all over the world. Thanks for listening. The next edition stars the one and only Steve Nallon. Just think spitting image. Margaret Thatcher. He's done more than that. Find out what next time on Eyes and Teeth.